Hi, everyone. Welcome to another segment of our mental health moments. My name is Linda Gallick. I'm the health and well-being consultant at Bellin Health, and I am so happy to be joined today by two fantastic therapists here at Bellin. We have Hannah Bauer and Michaela Vandenboom. Hi, ladies.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you all?
Good.
Doing
Good.
well.
All right. So today's segment, we're going to focus a little bit on a term. It is the crab bucket. So ironically, this was something that was in a magazine article that I was reading actually a couple years ago. And it's kind of an interesting theory, and the therapist can probably help me clear this up a little bit. But from what I understand, there is a phenomenon where what crabs actually do is they try to keep each other in a bucket. So they don't want their fellow crabs to get out of the bucket and discover the world. They want them all to stay together inside the crab button, safe and sound. And so it's this idea that there may be people in your lives that try to keep you inside the bucket. They try to contain you in some way. They try to keep you from stretching out further than they have stretched. They try to keep you maybe from learning something that they haven't learned. And so that is like this crab bucket phenomenon. So I thought this would be kind of an interesting topic to discuss with you all today. Maybe what that can look like in people's lives, and then of course what they can do about it. So let me start with you, Hannah. Have you heard of this term before? Does this come into play in your work every day with your patients?
I have not necessarily heard this term, but I've seen it happen. Yeah. So I think it's important, like you had said initially, the idea is keeping, from the crab's perspective, I suppose, keeping things safe and sound, right? So it's not necessarily something where there is malicious intent, and it's probably not necessarily even something that the person that's doing the holding back is even aware that they're doing. Um, it's just something that happens. You know, people see change and is not necessarily met with support or curiosity. It's met with fear, right? So people just want to keep you where they are most comfortable seeing you, experiencing you, and it makes them feel like, okay, like we're on an even playing field. I don't have to worry about changing. I feel comfortable. This is how I want to keep things, which is why boundaries are important, which is why being self-aware is important, because you can still have these people in your life. You just need to have pretty significantly clear boundaries so that you can grow, they can stay where they're comfortable, and they don't necessarily have to feel threatened by your growth and your change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about you, Michaela? What do you think of this phenomenon? What does it look like from your perspective?
All that comes to mind right now is dysfunctional family dynamics.
Yes.
Where you can challenge that and put it in a way of it could have malicious intent, right? Like you could have some codependent relationships where we may or may not want the other people around us to experience other types of relationships within families and friendships, because if they do, they'll realize or they'll notice, hey, this isn't healthy for me, or this isn't something that we should be continuing. And then that, as the person, the crab holder over here, doesn't want them to know, because then we have to face
the
that.
benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not doing something that we should be doing, or we should make changes ourselves, and we don't want to do that. So let's keep everyone in this nice little bubble here, or the crab bucket, so to speak, so they don't have to experience something better than what we have to offer.
Yeah, so let's tap into that a little bit. So I want us to learn more about that. So tell us more about codependence, because we hear that term and it gets kind of thrown around. And what does that really look like? Like what's going on there? Go ahead, Michaela. I'm gonna stick with you, Michaela, since you brought up the codependent thing. I wanna go down that path. Tell me more about codependence.
I mean, codependence is in pretty much all the different relationships out there, right? Like a lot of the times people create those dynamics within each other, whether it's a romantic couple or a parent-child relationship. So you get a benefit out of something they do, and they get a benefit out of something we're doing. And we need to have that coexistence in order to keep living and surviving. And if we don't, then what else is out there, right?
Yeah, it's like an
But when does
unrealistic
it
shared belief.
but when does it go outside the boundary, and when does it become dysfunctional? Like, when does it become a problem?
I don't think it becomes a problem until somebody else outside addresses it as a problem.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think technically it always be a problem, because it's not healthy, but until someone else from the outside is
Oh.
like, hey, this isn't great. This is how things should look. And then that at least one person from that partnership is like, oh, I want to make some changes, and disrupts, what had been a happy codependent relationship. Then you see a lot of conflict.
Like if
Mhm.
someone gets out of that crab bucket and
Mhm.
realizes, hey, life is a little bit different out
Yes.
here, that's where the light bulb goes off.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, it's people can be in those spaces, and if it works for them, it works for them,
Mhm.
and we can't
Right.
necessarily judge that. But then when one person says, "You know what? This is kind of keeping me in a space that I don't want to be in. And this is kind of making me feel like I can't make other relationships, or I can't have other
Right.
friends, or I can't grow myself in a way that might be threatening to this person." Like, I saw this a lot back when I was a Weight Watcher leader. I saw, and not that it can't happen to men, but of course, our clientele was mostly women. But I saw a lot of women that were fearful, kind of like what you were saying, Hannah, fearful of change,
Mhm.
fearful of how their partners were going to receive them. I heard it from time to time, my husband is threatened by me getting more
Mhm.
attractive. My husband is threatened by me getting healthier because he thinks I'm going to
Mhm.
leave him. And that you start to go
Yeah.
down that pathway of, well, this is just a woman that's trying to take care of herself, and do something healthy, and do something to
Mhm.
make herself feel better. She's not necessarily looking to leave,
Right.
but sometimes the person would take it as such.
Mhm. Yeah. And like that threat, real or perceived, can set off, just a spiral of reactions, because, in a codependent relationship, there's always at least, I'd say there's one person who is mainly in control, who is mainly the one that's really receiving most of the benefit. The other
Mhm.
person, yes, obviously they're participating in this relationship, I guess you can call it that. Um, but more so out of necessity, more so, it's not a balanced relationship. So
Yeah.
when the person that was previously, right, like in control, feeling like they're receiving most of these benefits, suddenly is not, they're not going to respond to that well, because now they're not the person in control. Now the person that they were able to control and manipulate is kind of coming out of this fog. They're like, well, how am I going to get my benefits now?
Mhm.
What am I going to do? How do I manipulate this
Mhm.
person that is suddenly having this stronger sense of self, and they know who they are,
Yeah.
when before I was able to tell them who they were? Now what do I do?
Mhm.
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 It's driven off
And one
that, like,
thing, go
sorry.
ahead, Mikhail.
It's
No,
driven
go
off that
ahead.
need to feel wanted too, right? That need to
Mm-hmm.
feel wanted, that need to feel needed by somebody
Needed.
else. So
Yes.
we keep them in dysfunction so they have someone
Yes.
to revert back
Mm.
on, and that gives
Yes.
us that power.
Because then they have to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the need to be needed, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
that the purpose is, I need to be needed.
Yeah, it's like the controlled chaos that's not really chaos, but then it creates a need, and then they're there, and they can, create the calm, which isn't necessarily, it's not real, but yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned, Hannah, that I wanted to spend a little time on was the idea of the fear of change. The fear
Mhm.
of change. And I know we've spent a lot of time, even just in our workplace, talking about this because, for those of you that have heard, Belling combined with Gunderson Healthcare System, and we're
Mhm.
introducing our new name and our new brand, and we're becoming Amplify Health. And there's a lot of emotions around that, and some people are super excited about it, and some people are sad about it, and And we talk about how we can help the human side of change, how we can help humans acclimate to the changes that are happening, because of course change is inevitable. Nothing that is as it is today will stay as it is today forever and ever. That's just the way our world works. So how do we help ourselves, and how do we help other people, get past this fear of, I don't want it to change and it has to stay the way it is. And I always used to tell my Weight Watcher people, well, if nothing had ever changed in the program, we'd all still be making our own ketchup. And we all know that that wasn't a real fun time when people had to make their own ketchup. So sometimes, evolution is beneficial, right? We have these magical little cell phones because things evolved and changed. So how do we help people? How do we help people with change? How do we help ourselves with change? What do you think, Michaela? How do we start to dive into that and help ourselves and others?
Well, like you said, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So we have to be comfortable and creating spaces where we can ask questions and we can inform and we can educate. Because if nobody has that space of all these unknowns, where do they go? We're not going to move forward with that, and we're going to be fearful, and we're not going to want to make those changes forward. So being open, being accepting, being, you know what, okay, we're doing this, but we're all in this together because we don't know what it's going to look like as of right now. You could take that in many different aspects of your life. I mean, just even thinking about like the merge and our rebranding, like ask questions, frequently ask questions. There's resources available. That's anywhere with anything in our lives.
Yeah.
There's no silly question out there. Everyone else has probably wondered what the answer would be. So it just took the courage for someone to ask it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think if you can validate that fear and encourage the people to ask questions, then, I mean, that fear can be translated to curiosity, right? Because then it's not something that you're just going to hold on to and let it grow. Like, then when you are met with change, it can be met with curiosity. You can actually not necessarily like welcome the fear, but you're not going to be so just in shock when you're fearful of something. You can push through that, you can manage it, you can function with it, because like you guys said, change is inevitable. Nothing stays the same. We need to be able to function, right? So we need to be able to recognize, okay, this is scary, but I have some questions, I know what to do with that, I can manage this fear, and I can continue.
And coming up with a tentative game plan too, just based on the information you've received. Nothing will be certain because we don't know what it looks like, but these are the options X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
The other thing I've really seen is really helpful for people when they are acclimating to change is if they can understand the why behind the change. So if they know the change isn't happening just because of, some crazy fluke, but there's actual intention and there's actually good intention likely behind that change. And the more questions you ask and the more curious you get and the more people you talk to, you can learn about the why. And then those of us that are involved in changes and we're implementing changes and we're bringing things to our teams, to our families, whatever that looks like, if there's a why behind it, if there's a why, people are much quicker, I think, to adapt, and they see the good intention behind the change, and they feel better about the change too.
Yeah. And I think people want to feel included. Like if you can, provide a why, and you can say, like, this is something that we've thought of you, like you've brought concerns, or we can see how you would benefit. Like, people want to be included. They don't want to be, just told, we're doing this, figure it out, you're going to be fine. It is what it is. They want to be considered, they want to be included, they want like steps. They want to be part of the process as much as they can, whatever's reasonable. But I think that it's important to consider everyone while change is happening as much as you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Tying it back into like the codependency and the fear, remembering that not everybody is going to agree with change and not everybody is going to like it either. And that's okay.
Yes, because they're not supposed to. Change is not going to benefit everybody.
So if we feel like we are in a crab bucket of some sort, whether it be with our families, whether it be in our workplace, maybe we have a group of friends that kind of keeps us stuck. What do we do? What do we do? How do we have the bravery to climb out, and do something about it?
I think the first thing is probably to recognize it, to know what's actually happening, to see a pattern of behavior, and then to decide, like, is that what I want to continue? Is that what I want my life to look like? Because if it is, that's fine, right? Like, nobody else can make that choice for you. And if that's what you want, then great. But if it's not, then you have to decide, like, what do these boundaries need to look like? I've had an influx of people who are starting to not necessarily go no contact, but low contact, with family members and figuring out how to do that. Um, that's an option. Like, you just need to figure out what those boundaries need to look like. In terms of friends, you kind of have to decide, like, are these friends? Are these people that
Yeah.
are actually in my corner that are going to lift me up if I need something and they're already pulling me down? Are they just going to pull me down further? Is that something I need in my life? It's scary to make new friends, to say goodbye. You're going to go through a grieving process and nobody wants to do that. But again, you have to decide, like, is this the life that I want to lead, or will I be happier when I feel like I have more control and I can make supportive friendships?
And sometimes it's a part of life, right? Like as
Mhm.
we evolve and as we change and as we do different things, sometimes our relationships have to change with that
Yeah.
because there are people that just maybe can't grow with us.
Mhm.
They aren't there. It's
Yeah.
not working. And so sometimes we're not gonna always have those friends forever. But
Mhm.
that's okay because I think too, as we evolve ourselves, we also connect with other people that may be in that same space.
Mhm. Yeah. We have
And
to go ahead.
recognizing that not all endings of relationships have to be bad too. Sometimes you
Mhm.
just grow apart.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like, everyone else has their limitations, like, yeah, not everyone is meant to be in your life forever,
Hmm.
and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, I think this was a great topic to kind of go with. Lots of interesting, discussion points that came out of it. Any other points that you wanted to add that we didn't get to? Anything else you wanted to say about change or dysfunction or codependence or crab buckets? All these great terms. Anything else?
I don't think so. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you ladies being with us today. Always love our conversation and just appreciate you bringing awareness, continuing to put that spotlight on mental health through these mental health moments. We want to continue to remind anyone who's watching or listening just how incredibly important your mental health is, and we want you taking care of yourself. So we hope that this helps. We look forward to seeing you again in another segment. Until then, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Have a great day, everyone.